Welcome back, dear viewers. Thank you for joining us here in the program. As we promised you, we will be talking in one of our major topics here to be discussed in the breakfast show about the role of the media in raising awareness of the people in different domains and different issues, especially that it has become an effective means, the most effective means that influences citizens' opinions, public opinion, and even their lives. There is no doubt that the role of the media has a vital and effective role in many domains and many issues, and that role has grown along the years in this small village, the word you must know by now, and the very small village we live in. We are honored to have with us here in the studio Dr. Mohamed Nashaar, the Dean of Faculty of Media and Languages. A very good morning to you, Dr. Nashaar. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. So it's a big topic we are discussing.
It is indeed.
The role of the media. So could you first tell us how you saw the rise of the role of the media along the years as we've gotten into different types of outlets? Before it was just radio, then it was, before it was the press, and before the press it was something else, perhaps primitive, and then we had TV, and then we have social media, and then
long history indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, essentially, if we start, we need to define what public opinion is.
Yeah.
So public opinion is usually the group of ideas and beliefs shared by people. But how can people acquire such ideas and beliefs? A great renowned discourse analyst called Toon Van Dyke said that we acquire ideas and beliefs through what he calls the symbolic elite. By the symbolic elite, he means the nuclear family, the extended family, the educational institutions, the religious institutions, and most of all, media persons who have access to people, who have access to people's minds, who can share and form mental images about certain issues people want to take decisions over. So with the fast-growing technology, pace of technology and digitization and mediatization, actually, the role of media has been intensified. Before, as you said, of course, in the past, we used to have what we call zero mediatized people with little or no access whatsoever to media. Now, rarely, if ever, can you find such people. Regardless and irrespective of their social class, with a high, medium, or low. All people have mobile phones, they can access internet at their free will. So in here, the ubiquitous dissemination of mediatization is now having its own positive and negative aspects.
Right.
They have its own upsides and downsides. And if we want to be more specific and instantiate that, I'm going to give you two examples of how positive the media can be and how negative the media role can be. If we start with the positive one, if we go to history, like you started, if we go to ancient history, Egypt was the first country in the world to mediatize its achievements. That was in the Pharaonic era, where kings starting from King Namar in the Old Kingdom, going to King Nekhbitu II in the late period, where kings were depicted on temple walls and steles, using a mace on the one hand, and pulling the enemy, a subdued enemy with the other hand, giving an internal message to the people that there is a strong army that can protect them and to which they can lean. So this is a very, very positive image from the ancient world. If you go directly, a great jump to the current world, we have the Arabic language, the Choice TV series. The Choice TV series, it has been factual. It has been actually, people have believed this series because of its factuality. It did not overstate or understate any of the facts. Just it paired the bare facts before people. And I believe that there were more than 3 million impressions on that TV channel. President Sisi on the first day of the Lissa Baram, he said this TV series is tantamount to 1,000 books. So look how positive, how consequential the media effect can be in just one dramatized event. If you go to the negative sides, actually the negative, how can media be negative? There is another TV, on the other hand, on the extreme side of the whole situation, which is called Breaking Red. It's an American TV series depicting a thug, a criminal, a hardened criminal, and people were made to sympathize with this criminal. Most unluckily, viewers were actually, it has been trended, and it notched very, very high viewing percentage. This is too bad, of course, for the generations, for teenagers, for adults alike. The second negative thing, it's even more alarming and flagrant example of how media can play a nefarious effect on people. It is by terrorist groups, general terrorist groups like ISIS, like even MB, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Al-Qaeda, or wherever in the world. They published an Arabic book that translated it into English on their terrorist websites, and I know it. Yeah. It's called, "Oh, media person, you are a mujahid too. You are a holy warrior too." In this book, which is, again, I said it's in Arabic and in English, they are, of course, conscious, very, very conscious of the very, very important role of media in proliferating their toxic ideas. They try to indoctrinate into teenagers, into gullible people, how toxic and their messages, their terrorist messages, and they want to skew their mentality and ideology into being recruited into such terrorist groups. So it's a huge, ferocious attack by terrorist groups that should be countered by another attack. It's a war, and all people, even the president, the political leadership, said it's a fourth or fifth generation war. Right. Yes, launched by media, not by the guns, actually. So this is we have very, very important role to play in here.
I guess, Dr. Nashaar, that the issue of awareness is a very key issue, especially nowadays. And, you know, I guess that before it was easy to control the media. I mean, we saw eras when many states, for instance, even in the near future, in the 19th or in the 20th century even, used to control the media and were able to control it. Radio, for instance, or TV. TV, yeah, or the traditional TV. But now it's very, very hard to control media. I mean, you tell us if it is impossible, actually, with all the new media outlets that we're having and the social media that the world has access to. So I'm wondering, how important is the issue of awareness? And are we going back to an era where, you know, interpersonal communication is going to be, again, the #1 way of shaping public opinion and conviction?
We can't go back, actually, into prior history or into history. We are progressing forward, and we can't stop that from progressing. If that was controllable in certain era of history, it is uncontrollable, like you said, of course. It's virtually impossible. If it is even impossible to control all social media platforms, this is uncontrollable, of course, with all its platforms, with all its multifarious platforms. So again, we should not be seeking to control it or to restrict it, because if you restrict it, you can, of course, in totalitarian regimes and authoritarian regimes, and you will be accused of authoritarianism and totalitarianism, which are a far cry from that. Of course, we are liberal.
But people might find a technological trick around.
It is not. Things. It is not a matter of. It's in my personal, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a matter of controlling and restricting restricted area, restricted zones, like some countries. Yes, in Asian countries or so. But to raise awareness, you have to, the counterattack must be to raise awareness to the maximum. Raise awareness,
and that's why I asked about interpersonal communication.
Interpersonal,
is it getting back to higher levels of importance like it used to be?
Yes, interpersonality is very, very important. Number one. Number two, if you talk about how to raise awareness, this is very, very important. You disseminate ubiquitously all the achievements, the currently made on the ground. And here I need to focus, I need to draw attention to certain very, very important points. We should not be directing or orienting public opinion, because if you direct public opinion or orient public opinion, this implies certain manipulation, that you are convincing the public opinion, the general public, of something that has not been achieved, but they make believe that it has been achieved, which is contrary to what the Egyptian government is doing. What is the Egyptian government is doing is that it is mediatizing achievements currently being made on the ground. Ask a farmer, ask any farmer in any distant village in Egypt about constructions, about the construction, about campaigns, general campaigns made by, of course, presidential through or within the framework of presidential initiatives like construction, like boosting the health of 100 million citizens, like all-in-one campaign, like solidarity and dignity campaign, and they benefit from that, and they tell you sincerely and honestly, we benefit from that. So public opinion is very smart. If you tell him what is really achieved on the ground, they believe you. So it is not directing or it's just raising awareness, not directing or manipulating public mind, and this is very, very important.
Yeah, it is.
The second thing is the political leadership in Egypt has been doing something that has not been done in 4 or 5 decades, perhaps. It is called short-term orientation and long-term orientation. I need to define in very simple words. Short-term orientation means you satisfy the needs and demands of the people of today. You're not thinking of tomorrow at all, or the day after tomorrow. Long-term orientation, yes, you satisfy the needs of today, and concurrently, you focus on what is happening tomorrow. You have a futuristic look. The political leadership in Egypt, of course, under the great leadership of President Sisi, is doing that for the first time in years and years. So it has a futuristic look. Look at the new capital. Look at the future plan, the planning ministry, and the plan over the 2030. We're going to reach so and so over 2020. Look at the very, very positive indicators made by European economic institutions like Standard Chartered, like many actually economic institutions, and they have a very, very upbeat future look of Egypt. So in here, we are focusing on the long-term orientation. Like the pharaohs, by the way, if you go to the pharaohs, and we go today, they have more or less very concordant policy of long-term orientation. We are going to achieve blah, blah, we are going to reach these multifarious achievements over, or accomplishments over the coming 10 years or 20 years or so. So the long-term orientation here is very, very important. And by the way, the Dutch psychologist called Hofstede, he has an association gauging and assessing what he calls the national cultural values of nations around the globe. Usually Egypt, unluckily, has taken a very little percentage of 7% of long-term orientation. It is always believed, widely believed, that Egyptians are caring only about how to satisfy their needs and their demands of today. They don't think of the future so much. 7%. At the same time, in the meantime, European countries used to score 70 and 80% on the long-term orientation, what they are going to achieve in the future. But now, go to the site, go to the website, and this is the happy news. Go to Hofstede site now. The Egyptians have jumped. The Egyptian people, not the government, even, have jumped from 7% to 42%. A great jump in long-term orientation.
Indeed.
Which is great.
Indeed. Now, Dr. Nashaar, media work has special principles and specifications and conduct an ethical code, I guess. And this is, to some extent, is not always practiced or respected. So could you tell us why?
Everyone notices that. Principles are immutable, are unchangeable. If you talk about integrity, if you talk about honesty, veracity, responsibility, objectivity but not neutrality, I'm going to say that. It's objectivity, not neutrality. Being distanced from personal narrow parochial interests. These principles are everywhere. They should not be immutable. They should not be changed at all. But given the fact that social media is ubiquitously being disseminated all over the world, there are many social media platforms which are governed and moderated by a bunch of unprofessional, that is to say, unprofessional persons. I'm not going to say media persons. They don't deserve even the title. Unprofessional persons who flout any code of ethics. They do not abide by any principle of code of ethics and just disseminate news. And gullible people, not educated people, they have what I call a social plague. That is, they gaze and look and share without bothering to see whether this news is fake, false or true, whether to see to authenticate the source of this news. So this is very, very important in here and very, very hazardous practice. What should we do? What should we do? Again, should we be restrictive of these people? Should we restrict them? Should we ban them? We can't, as far as I'm concerned. So what should we do? What can we do? We should be launching intensified campaigns to raise awareness. So in the attack, we have the counter-attack. Look at the choice. And look at even TV series which are beneath the level. Look at the choice and how magnificent it was and how positive the impact it has placed on people.
It really caught my attention when you said objectivity and not neutrality.
Oh, yes.
So I want you to expand on that, please, Dr. Nashaar.
As far as I'm concerned,
yes, neutrality
is visionary, is imaginary principle that is found in the visionaries. Only visionaries, it's a utopian principle. Every platform, every news platform has its own interest. By interest, I do not mean personal interest. I mean maybe patriotic interest that serves to boost the government, that helps the government to prosper and thrive. So by interest may have a negative meaning and positive meaning, the word interest, and I've explained that. So look at the BBC, the CNN, and so on. They are not neutral at all, but they are objective. How? They are not, yes, bias. If you use bias in a professional way, it can be objectivity.
Right.
So
right.
objectivity here.
Because if you look at any issue and take sides, it could be an objective thing to take the right side and not the wrong side.
Exactly.
And thus objectivity here would be much better than neutrality, which is simply not taking sides.
Not found. Where can you find neutrality in here?
Besides the fact that this is...
so every platform, every outlet, news outlet or journalistic outlet or media outlet has its own interests. But what matters here is that are these interests patriotic, nationalistic, positive, or they have their own pernicious and nefarious and detrimental? This is the point. So by objectivity, you spread the news, you give different opinions about a certain news in a balanced way. This is objectivity, and it's up to the viewer to choose and to be convinced with whichever opinion you are spreading. So this objectivity. Of course, certain news outlets use manipulative devices by saying, if we can go in here, the repression and inclusion and exclusion. They can highlight certain news and give little, much less time for a piece of news that they do not want to highlight.
I'm really enjoying the conversation here, but unfortunately we're running out of time, so please allow me to ask you one final question. There must be a very important line, maybe it's a thin line, between the freedom of the press, the absolute freedom of the press, and at the same time higher interests of people's respecting the values of a nation and so on. So could you talk to us about that?
Can't agree more. Can't agree more. Absolute unbridled freedom of the press is, to me, chaos. It is chaotic. It is not happening even in America, even in most European countries, England, Germany, France, Italy, wherever. So the freedom of the press should not be controlled. I should not be misconstrued about that. It should be taken and employed and harnessed to the best maximum possibility to raise people's awareness about the current factual achievements. These are not visionary achievements, they are factual achievements on the ground. Everyone sees them. So this is it. So the freedom of the press, yes, it should be free, of course. No one actually argues about that. But absolute, unbridled freedom may lead in some countries to chaos. You should not control them, but you should raise the awareness, you should intensify campaigns to raise awareness of people about the positive achievements the government is relentlessly and tirelessly trying to achieve and has achieved already.
Indeed. Dear viewers, on behalf of you, we thank very much here at the end of this conversation, Dr. Mohamed Nashaar, Dean of Faculty of Media and Languages. It was a great pleasure and honor to have you with us, sir.
Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Dear viewers, please stay with us. My dear colleague Mahisti Arabia will be back to continue this morning's edition of The Breakfast Show. Do not go away.